Fuck.
Oh.
Oh. What? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna fucking do it. I often take a look at classic games on this channel, and for the most part, they're pretty damn good. Obviously, I don't choose the terrible ones, and you certainly know by now that I think older games are better pretty much across the board. But today, things are a little bit different. I'm going to directly compare the original Battletoads, which came out before my time, before I was born, actually. And I don't have that much experience with NES games. I know that they're infamously difficult. And Battletoads might be the most famous of all, at least close to Ninja Gaiden and Ghosts and Goblins. And I'm going to compare it to last year's reboot, which nobody seemed to care about, and honestly, for good reason. You just have to take one look at the art style to see why it put people off. And let's find out which is better. The answer might just surprise you. But before we do the things the algorithm likes. Check out my Patreon if you want to support me directly. This is actually a Patreon request video. Yes, it's been a while since I've done one of these. Thank you to RyanB00 for your support. And without further ado, let's smash some controllers. Everything you've heard about the original Battletoads is true, and I mean everything. In fact, I don't even think any of these famous retro YouTubers' videos really do the difficulty justice. I mean, you really have to play the game for yourself to realize just how impossibly difficult it is. I think I'm going to fail to explain it here, honestly, because obviously game difficulty is subjective, and while I certainly think I'm above average in skill, some people might think otherwise, so I can't really convince you one way or the other. So honestly, I think I'm going to recommend Battletoads just so that you can see for yourself how difficult it is, but to try to put it into words. Basically, you have 4 lives, very few extra lives scattered amongst the levels. You have 3 continues, and whenever you get a game over, it restarts the level. And if you use all of your continues, you have to start the entire game over again. There are no saves. You have to beat the game in one run. Now, that wouldn't be horrible if this was an average difficulty game, but of course it's not. No, starting with the Turbo Tunnel, probably the most infamous level in the game. Every single level after that 3rd level is extremely difficult, except for, weirdly enough, probably the last level. It's funny that if you just play the first level of the game, you would think Battletoads is a beat-em-up, but it's really not. It's a platformer. A platformer with a lot of different, like, mini-game gimmick sections that you would see in other games, like riding the hoverboards, or a surfboard, or a little rocket. There's a lot of these sections in the game, and even the beat-em-up / platforming sections have a lot of unique gimmicks to keep it challenging. I'm not going to bother to describe every level, because then we'd be here all day. But basically, the first level is a standard beat-em-up level, surprisingly easy. Second level, you descend down this huge tunnel, and it's a little bit of a difficulty jump. It's the first introduction of instant kill enemies, and there are many, many ways to die instantly in this game. And pretty much in all the later levels, enemies kill you in 2 hits, so it's really not much better. But it's after you beat that second level that the game finally shows its true form to you with the infamous Turbo Tunnel. And yes, the Turbo Tunnel is very difficult, but it's not the hardest part of the game. That's the sad part. In fact, it's probably not even the 3rd hardest level in the game. The reason why it's known so well, other than videos like AVGN's famous one.
Alright, now just don't hit any walls, but get the ramp, get the ramp! Oh, fuck! How'd you miss that? I don't know!
It's just that nobody ever beat the 3rd level. It's that hard. Because it's truly trial and error gameplay. Because even though, as you're dodging these platforms, it does telegraph them briefly to show you what the next one is. Near the end of the course, there's not enough time to react, so you just have to know what the next barrier is. And a lot of times it's predictable. Like, the hardest part of the race is one where you just go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. But you have to do it so perfectly. If you fuck up even slightly, it's over. But there's also like weird mechanics with the jumps and just this little stuff that's gonna get you killed. And so if you somehow manage to beat that level legitimately, which, you know, you can if you put enough effort into it, I wasn't going to play this game legitimately. Obviously, I used an emulator, because I would never beat this game if I tried to do it legit, so I cheated my way, and even cheating, it was still extremely hard. But even after this, and this is probably the best thing I can say about the game, is that it constantly throws new obstacles at you. It's just too hard. It just expects too much of you. There's an ice level with ice physics, of course, because who doesn't love those? There's a surfboard level that's very similar to the turbo tunnel with weird hopping mechanics. There's a level where you ride a spacecraft and you have to dodge these lightning bolts crossing the screen, which is definitely harder than the turbo tunnel and just all around kind of ridiculous. There's some boss fights, which are weirdly probably the easiest parts of the game. Pretty much any of the short beat-em-up segments are easy. There are these huge sewer tunnels where you have to outrun these huge buzzblade gear things. There's just so much stuff that the game throws at you that it is constantly interesting. It's just so brutally hard that it's honestly just not fun. Unless you're an extreme masochist, which, you know, I might be a small bit of a masochist. I mean, I do love the Souls games, but not this much. This is ridiculous. This is a new tier of difficulty that most likely you'll never experience playing a video game, because who would be insane enough to release a game in this state? I know Rare has a very large library of awesome games from the 90s. I really wouldn't consider Battletoads one of them. I honestly can't believe this game got released in this state. I know why they made games like this, because how are you going to sell a game for $50 that's only like 2 hours long? Well, you make it extremely hard, like ridiculously stupid hard, and they just went too far this time. That being said, there is kind of a certain charm to the game, but there's just certain moments in there that it's like, unless you're cheating, they're basically impossible. There's a level, I believe it's the second last level, where you ride this hover bike and all you have to do is change directions to follow the track, right? The track will go left, right, up, down, and you just have to hold that direction on the D-pad to go faster to outrun this little black hole thing. It is so ridiculously precise, and you cannot afford to fuck up, just at all. That basically the legitimate strategy to beat this level is to cheat by pause buffering, which essentially you just pause every time you get to a corner and then hold the next direction on the D-pad and then unpause. And that still wasn't enough. I had to slow the game down in the emulator just to beat it, which is partially because I was running it at 60 frames and this game was never meant to run at 60 frames, which that in itself probably made certain elements of the game harder. There's another part where you have to outrun these 3 rats, and the third rat is so ridiculously fast. You have to time it perfect to punch the rat to make him turn around to buy you like half a second more of time, and you have to do that like 10 times. But yeah, I guess there's not much else to say about the game. Just give it a try, I guess, if you want. It's just not that fun, but it is very creative. As for the new Battletoads, honestly, it's completely different, because I didn't know this going in, but this is actually more faithful to the Battletoads arcade game, which I guess was kind of a sequel to the original, but it's just a straight up beat 'em up game. But this Battletoads actually does sort of try to mix the original game and the arcade game together, and it does it surprisingly well, at least if you're judging a book by its cover, which we all know we do. We like to say otherwise, but if a game has a really bad art style, you're going to be put off by it. And unfortunately, this is a CalArts reject type of art style. So it definitely took a while to get used to it, because it really looks horrible, especially the Dark Queen. I could go on about, feminists or SJWs or whatever censoring this character who is obviously supposed to be like a femme fatale type of attractive evil woman. And they just made her flat and like ugly and have this generic purple coat that just covers her whole body. It just looks bad. But honestly, it's more interesting to talk about the in-game reaction to the criticism. Because of course, these people can never take criticism. So they literally inserted a character in the game to represent the criticism of the redesign of the character.
One more thing. I'm sorry, but it absolutely has to be said. This new outfit? Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!
Tell me the location of the secret entrance!
There's a map in my back pocket! It's yours! Got it.
I guess we've changed, Jeff. I've grown more impatient, and you want to control what I'm wearing. Like you're entitled to it because we hung out 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's about as bad as I expected, I'll admit. Now, as for the gameplay, of course, it's actually a beat-em-up, unlike the original game and like the arcade game. But it's only half a beat-em-up, weirdly. The first half of the game is mostly standard beat-em-up mechanics. You have a basic attack, you have a heavy attack, you have a launcher attack to start those mid-air combos, and you can dodge. You can also pull enemies towards you or pull yourself to them, and also use bubble gum to stun them for a few seconds. And that's all the mechanics. There is no block, there's no super move, which is common to a lot of beat-em-ups. It's important to mention that I played this on Battletoads difficulty, which is the equivalent of hard. Because of course, I mean, if I'm going to compare these games, I should play Battletoads on its intended difficulty, which basically makes it so you die in 2 hits in the beat-em-up combat, the respawn timer between the Toads is longer, and it disables the invincibility freebie, you know, Super Mario 3D Land type of bullshit, where if you fail too many times, you basically just become invincible, which I really wish wasn't in the game, but whatever, at least it's disabled on hard. But generally, it's fine. For the most part, the combat feels pretty solid. Each character doesn't just look different, but also performs differently. Pimple is the heavy, slow character who hits hard. Zitz is the super fast character who can do a bunch of air combos, and Rash is somewhere in between. This game is also 3-player co-op. I obviously didn't play it in co-op, and I don't think I could have gotten anyone to play this with me, and it's local co-op anyway. So most people are probably going to play this by themselves. But I think for what it was, the beat-em-up combat kept me entertained. And I think on some level, the designers knew that the combat wasn't that great, which is why only half the game is actual beat-em-up combat. Much like the original game, there's a bunch of segments that are basically sort of mini-games. There's also like QuickTime event literal mini-games, which add nothing to the game and probably shouldn't be in the game. But they don't really hurt anything, I guess, because you just do them for points. There's only a couple you can actually fail. But these other level types are kind of a mixed bag. You have 2 Turbo Tunnel inspired sequences, which can actually get pretty difficult. They're a good challenge, and more fair than the actual Turbo Tunnel because you get a lot more warning to the upcoming obstacles since it's sort of like Mode 7 scrolling type of stuff, front to back, versus side scrolling. There is a sled segment that actually is side-scrolling, but that feels more like a throwback to the minecart challenges in like Donkey Kong Country than the Turbo Tunnel. But that level was actually pretty fun. There's space battles, which are basically just bullet hell, Galaga type of thing. You just shoot, there's some power-ups, and there's a dodge, but it is fun. It's just not 3 levels worth of fun. I definitely got tired of it by the end, but it does get pretty challenging. The problem is the last type of variant level, which is the puzzle platformer levels, where basically there's no beat 'em up. It's just running, jumping, roll jumping, which I guess is the equivalent of the long jump in like the Mario games. And yeah, they're just very simple puzzle platformer levels that you would see in any generic indie game. They're just not fun at all or interesting. And again, there's 3 of them. It's only in the last 2 levels of the game that it sort of becomes a beat 'em up again, albeit briefly. And I will say the boss battles are somewhat decent. At least I really like the axe guy. I thought he was a good challenge. So overall, yeah, it's kind of a clusterfuck of ideas that don't really all work, but at least it keeps things interesting. Now, honestly, the make or break of this game, depending on how you feel about the beat 'em up combat, is the story. Because it really doesn't work. Because it feels like they wanted to make a Saturday morning cartoon, essentially, instead of a video game. Because there are 2 cutscenes in this game, they're like almost 10 minutes each. It's really weird. I mean, obviously when you look at games from the NES era or Super Nintendo era, there wasn't much story to them. So the original Battletoads game basically had no story. You go stop the Dark Queen, blah, blah, blah. Well, in this, it's a bit more involved, of course. It's still pretty simple. It's just, it seems almost like they wanted to turn it into a Teen Titans Go type of thing. And I don't need to tell you how bad Teen Titans Go is. I'm sure you know. But basically the concept is the Battletoads have been trapped in like some bunker VR room for 26 years. And they're finally discovered, and basically they're nobodies on this alien planet. And so they get stuck at dead-end jobs. And suddenly they can't take it anymore, and so they decide to track down the Dark Queen and stop her, because I guess they think it's her fault somehow. This is where the first really weird thing comes in. You know, you can call me a conspiracy theorist, but just knowing the type of people who work on these types of projects. There's a small diaper fetish scene. I don't know what else to call it, because that's really what it seems like. Even though they mock it, it's disgusting. So that's a huge red flag. Eventually, they track down the queen. Turns out she's powerless. So they've got to team up and stop the Topians, which are essentially these two very flamboyant gods. Or as a woke person would say, they are coded LGBT or something. And yeah, they're evil overlords, and they torture those below them, and blah, 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 you know, whatever. And honestly, I don't know, I'm wasting my time describing the story. I guess the point is, there's some nice comedy thrown in there, but most of it was miss. There were a few jokes that made me laugh, but it's the weird type of thing where they're not jokes for children, they're jokes for man-children, where it pretends that it's for kids by saying they can't swear, but they can commit extreme violence, which, you know, I'll admit I laughed at that comment. But there's just some, I don't know, there's a weird tone to it I can't quite describe, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's for kids. It feels like it's an attempt to emulate the old family appeal of cartoons, but instead for millennials. So I guess hypothetically, if you're an older millennial with a young kid, you could probably play this game with them. That being said, it's bizarre. And of course, it's just hard to get over this art style. It's so bad. It's absolutely so bad. And I'm the type of guy who actually likes a drawn art style for some games. It can look pretty unique. But not Cal Arts. God, no. Stop with the Cal Arts, dude. It looks so bad. Every time the Dark Queen makes any kind of emotional expression, it just is disgusting. The only other thing that I will say about the reboot is that it has an insanely good soundtrack. I was surprised by this. I mean, obviously this is pretty subjective. I think if you don't like butt rock or metal, you're probably not going to like this very much. But as someone who loved the Crush 40 Sonic soundtracks, this will fit right at home with you. There's even a little bit of classic Doom inspiration thrown in there. Whether it's intentional or not, there's also some similarities to the Sunset Overdrive soundtrack. So, liking all of those things, I really enjoyed the soundtrack in this. It's honestly too good for this game. And so yeah, in conclusion, which is better, really? Well, they're not as comparable as I thought they would be, because really they're two different types of games. The original Battletoads is a platformer with light beat-em-up elements, and the new one is a half beat-em-up, half hodgepodge of other random mini games, I guess. But at the end of the day, I think I have to go with the new Battletoads. I mean, sure, I recommend the old one just to try. It's one of those games that if you have like a gamer bucket list where you feel like you have to try all these legendary games, Battletoads should probably be on there just so that you can say you played it and experience how ridiculously hard it is. But if you have any intention of actually beating the game, do not do it legitimately. Just don't. Don't waste your time. Just do it with an emulator. Nobody cares if you beat the game or not anyway. So just cheat. But the new Battletoads is actually legitimately enjoyable for the most part. The beat 'em up combat's a little too simplistic, and a couple of the other weird minigame levels just feel like a distraction, and they're not really robust or complex or deep enough to really keep you interested, but at least it throws a bunch of different concepts at you, and they're fun enough to keep you entertained. And the game still feels pretty challenging, at least on hard mode. Obviously not nearly as hard as the original, but at least they tried to recapture the spirit of difficulty of the original game, while being a lot more fair. So I definitely wouldn't say the new Battletoads is a great game, but, you know, if it's cheap, if it's on sale, give it a shot. Or if you have Xbox Game Pass, I'm sure it's on there.
What did you do?
Well, I made him 3 inches shorter. Doesn't seem like much, but his entire life will change.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Been a while since I've done one of these videos. It won't be so long to the next one. I don't think there's going to be anything going on in gaming for a few months that's actually that significant. I mean, I might be wrong. I'll admit I'm not that updated on release schedules, but I'll probably just do some classic games. I'll do another Patreon request in a few weeks, and things will probably slow down for a while, as far as I know. So, yeah, I don't know. Back to normalcy. This is probably the part where some bigger YouTuber would prompt you guys to talk about something in the comments below. I can't really think of anything, to be honest. I don't know. Well, what type of games are you guys playing? Did any of you guys grow up with NES, Super Nintendo, some, I don't know. Feel free to comment below. I'll see you next time, guys.